All right, so we got episode 4 here, standard 3, Dotson, Harris, and Ethan. Uh, we are going to ideally be talking a little bit about Afghanistan. We're going to be again referring to the 10 political rules, question of what is the demonstration of hate, and can this be resolved without bloodshed? Now, Afghanistan is going to be an interesting on that topic, but
Very interesting.
that is episode 4 of the new Social Dialectic American podcast, and we're gonna try and get right into it. So my mom contacted me asking me about my opinion in regards to the whole Afghanistan thing, and that's because we all served in Afghanistan at some point. We all had a deployment, and more or less, I told her that there really is no alternative. This was always going to happen. We always knew this was going to happen. It wouldn't really have mattered if we pulled out 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago. This was going to be the result, no matter what.
Yeah, this was going to be the reality of it. I mean, granted, it's arguably worse. In the fact that it was what, less than a month, like
Less than 2 weeks.
right? Them fucking they didn't
Well-
try to stop the Taliban, and then we sit there and airlift their president, out of country, because the fucking faggot couldn't just stay there. But
Yep, just let him run to Tajikistan.
Yeah, and my mom commented that she kept seeing this picture of the helicopter, and obviously anybody that's seen it and has seen the picture of the 1983 helicopter flying out of Vietnam, out of Saigon, they're like
Yeah.
almost identical. It's crazy.
yeah, I mean, like, not even to sugarcoat it, like, this is
1975, not
100.
1983. Continue.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, to not like sugarcoat it, this is like 110% like our Saigon. Is it worse? Yeah, because at least the Vietnamese fought to the end. I mean, look at all the shit we left there too. I mean, they got what, drones now, NRAPs, Humvees. Every single firearm we left there, ammunition.
So I'm not surprised that the Humvees were left behind. I am kind of surprised at the amount of MATVs, MRAPs. I'm pretty sure I've seen RG-33s rolling around in some of the videos I've seen. It's
they
crazy.
got all
Yep.
those.
One of my buddies
drones?
one of my buddies that I go to shooting competitions with, who was in Afghanistan a while back, he was posting pics of the Taliban driving a MATV he actually drove, one of the mine roller ones.
Nice. Yeah, I was wondering.
That-
I was like,
that's
his
the exact same designation on it and everything. He's like, what the fuck?
Right? Imagine that fucking roller coaster of a ride.
Well,
The
I
truck
know.
that
I'll
saved
laugh
your
at whatever
life.
Haji dude tries to take over mankind or the other Humvee I drove. Those things were so old and busted. God, blew the rear diff out when New York Times was with us, and that was the last vehicle that broke down on that mission too.
So something I wonder about is, we kind of have discussed a little bit about like it all like Davidson says it's none of these presidents' faults. Really, it's just the Afghanis' faults. But what I'm curious about is there a right way that this could have been done? I mean, once we made the express decision to go to Afghanistan, like, okay, 7th Group being deployed, one thing, but the moment 10th Mountain got deployed in 2001,
You mean the moment like Big Army got involved? Was there
Yeah.
a win condition?
or
Yeah.
is there a method, a way we could have gotten out after a certain point in time that wouldn't have caused all this?
Well,
Yes, I think.
Yeah,
When
if
this is going to be true with
I'll let
any
Dawson
counter.
go.
Okay, so I think this would hold true with any counter, like attacking any insurgency where the insurgency isn't based on any form of Western values. You have three options. One, strategic, quick surgical strikes just to attack specific targets and you bounce. Two, nuke and pave, like some people suggest we do in Vietnam. Nuke it, pave it, send the Marines in to paint the parking strip once it cools off, turn into a parking lot. Or you have to be willing to occupy the place for a minimum of a century, closer to a millennium, as you seed a new culture into the land. Because
Well, it
their
would be like
culture
a
was
true
largely
occupation.
Yeah, it would be literally a long-term annexation of the land, because that's what Rome would do. They would take over places and just
Yeah.
hold them forever until they felt they were Roman. If they didn't hold them for more than 2 generations, they had to fight a lot of rebellions. So they would just hold them and hold them until they couldn't anymore.
Yeah,
The biggest problem is that we went in without a win condition. Like,
Yeah.
we went in there trying to be like the bigger man, I guess you can say, because the world was watching. Like, look at our rules of engagement. You were going up against an enemy who was not going to follow those same rules.
Oh yeah, we swung all over the place on the ROE. Like, from what I've been told by people who were there in the very beginning, the ROE was very unrestricted when they first went in. It was essentially, you see dudes, you shoot dudes. They treated it like it was a full-blown total war, and
As they
oh,
should, but then it like
to
turned
some extent,
into
and it swung too hard in the opposite direction. Instead of a reasonable, hey, if it's clear the guy isn't going to do anything to you, don't blast him if he's just running away from you. But then it swung to, you can't engage them without them shooting at you first and you getting permission from higher, who isn't even there. It swung too hard. Like, near the end when we were there, it settled into some reasonable middle ground, but it took too long
not
to get
really. We were also over there during the Hearts and Mind campaign that Obama started, which was a fucking joke to begin with.
there. Yeah,
Like, how
but
do you
on
win the
flip
hearts and
side,
mind of people who like fundamentally hate us?
yeah, we couldn't even understand their hearts and minds. You can't win people you don't understand.
Yeah,
But
right.
we
Like,
were also
all right,
attached
why
to
did like
SF dudes, and at least the group we were with, at least the guys in my base were with, their general rule was that they could clearly demonstrate hostile intent pretty easily, and so we're allowed to engage fairly freely. It's just that they weren't just shooting at every Tom, Dick, and Harry they saw on the street. Had to be pretty clear the dude was going to do something, but
well,
usually if they were watching SF dudes, they were pretty clearly going to do something.
and that's the thing about Rome occupying these lands for so long, is that in that first generation, oftentimes they would be incredibly brutal for a long time, and
but you
we
have
never
to
really
be.
did that.
Like in our first episode, right, where we were talking about the articles and whether or not we would instill those, right? So to go back to that, right? If we agreed to live in a society like that, you wouldn't need those rules. But when you want to force people to live in a society like that, you need those articles to enforce those rules. You know what I mean? So for us to be there and to like it sounds fucked up, but to let them keep their culture, we were basically destined to fail from the get go. And we all knew it. I mean, there was no way to sugarcoat it.
Well, were we set in stone to maintain the native culture because of decades-long policies and propaganda regarding multiculturalism and diversity at home?
Yeah,
Well,
pretty
yeah.
much. We had this, like, with neocons and neolibs running things at the time. There was certainly a fairly universal belief at the political level that maybe not all cultures are equal, but all cultures have value and should be protected, and kind of lost part of that sense of American exceptionalism that no, West is the best for a reason. Look at all this shit the West has done, and it's the fruit of our cultures versus what the Arabic world has done in the, what, 1200 or 800 years since Wahhabism started. Yeah, it's been
See,
nothing but shit from them.
it's interesting
Well,
because like I personally, from that very small soundbite, I personally think that all cultures do have value, but they don't necessarily need to be protected, right? Like that isn't that
well,
like the
yeah,
free market
that's
perspective on culture?
well, yeah, that's like not the crux of it, but like all cultures have value, but it doesn't mean that they're worth protecting. Like, is it really worth protecting a culture that doesn't, allow, women to, get an education? Probably
You
not.
mean like America for the first 150 years?
Eh, we were better then. No, I'm kidding. but but no, like look at Afghanistan, right? When we were there, I don't know if you guys did it, but I know we pulled security for like this was the first time like these girls ever went to school, and we pulled security for that. That's like a cool thing,
Yeah.
but
Also,
that's gonna
also
that's
look at
gonna go away now.
Afghanistan. Also, look at Afghanistan before the Soviets invaded, and before we started supplying the Mujahideen with firearms. It was
100%.
it was a vacation
we-
spot for Europeans.
Like, we 110% fucked that up when we started giving the Mujahideen weapons. You know, because they were probably, I guess you would say, a minority. That would make sense, right? And the next thing you know, they're being supplied by, one of the biggest countries in the world to defeat the second biggest country in the world. And then they end up doing it.
Just completely
it's not
forget
like
about
they're-
China and India. It's no big deal.
Fuck them. They're trying to kill each other anyway.
Bro,
But
completely unrelated. Are you guys aware that China is trying to dam up the Indus River? Pretty sure
Are
it's
they
the
really?
Indus. It's one of those. It's one of those real big river systems that flows through India. Yeah, they're trying to dam it up. It starts in the Himalayas, and that's where they're trying to dam it.
I know the last thing I read was that the Indians were sending something like 1,500 troops to the Chinese border, or the India-Chinese border, which is pretty fucking impressive.
Well, China and India have beef for a while. They actually have some rules on the ground on how they fight those little fights they'll have. I've seen videos of them. They use like rocks and sticks, like they're a bunch of cavemen fighting each other because they're both nuclear powers and they don't want it to escalate to a full-blown nuclear war over a border dispute. And it's going to span the Brahmaputra River, to answer your question from earlier.
Thank you. It's a real. I know it's a real big river, and
yeah.
it can cause lots of problems down the road. And Kenya is doing the same exact thing to the Nile River, so they're fucking Egypt over. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be crazy.
But the it flows through Egypt first. The only way it's gonna fuck Egypt is.
What are you talking about?
You said Kenya's damaged, or no?
Yeah,
I'm dumb.
it
Sorry.
flows north.
Yeah, it's the only one that flows. It's one of the only ones that flow north. I forgot. My brain
Like,
did
can you
change.
call yourself?
Hey man, it's 11 o'clock. I only got like 4 hours of sleep last night. I'm likely to only get 5 tonight.
Hell yeah. But anyway, yeah, back to Afghanistan. Like, we went in there without a win condition. That's just it. Like, like us who were on the ground, like, we knew that, like, that wasn't, and they lied to like the American public, and we know that now from, what was that, 2020, when those DoD documents leaked about how they lied about the.
That's the invasion of Iraq you're talking about with the WMDs.
No, I thought. No. It was I mean, there was that, but no, I think it was in 2020, or it might have been 2019, when the DoD documents leaked stating that they lied to, and MSM was in on it, about how the conditions overseas, like, they basically just lied about it. They were telling the American public that we were quote unquote winning, when in reality we weren't doing anything. It was basically how it was when we first got there.
Well, but I mean, like with Iraq, we did have a win condition, and that turned out to be the equivalent shit show.
Well, but it goes back to like the culture. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we went in with a win condition, but we were also trying to teach people something that they weren't at all familiar with.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a standard military thing and use a football analogy for this, because how many of our commanders like using them. The initial win conditions in Iraq and Afghanistan that were achieved to some extent, that they were the equivalent of scoring touchdowns. It's just that instead of just realizing we scored the touchdown, that was all our goal should have been, and then going home, we then decided, okay, instead of scoring touchdowns, let's see if we could throw a pass to every single person in the stands, or some other impossible objective. And then spent the next
basically it just turned into like impossibilities. Like how do you
we didn't try to rebuild Europe until the peace was achieved. We never achieved a peace in Iraq or Afghanistan. We just tried to rebuild in the middle of it. We tried to Marshall Plan those places while basically still rolling tanks through the Fulda Gap. Yeah,
like people don't understand, like the Shiite and Sunnis, right? Like What's the difference between them? I couldn't fucking tell you. I don't think anyone could fucking tell you.
I can tell you. I can tell you what the difference is between them.
I mean,
and I'm not gonna. I don't know which one's which, but one of them follows the direct lineage of Muhammad, and another one follows the a castigated brother or son of Muhammad, something like
Wait,
that.
the difference between Sunni and Shia?
Yeah,
They disagree over who should have been the second caliph.
there you
One
go.
group believes the second caliph was rightfully selected. The other believes the fourth caliph was supposed to be the second caliph. That's one of the many disagreements they have, but that's like the foundation of it.
so it's bullshit.
And it's interesting because a caliph is explicitly not a democracy. We went in there saying, "Hey, do this democracy; it'll be good for you." And they're all like, "Nah, we're good. We prefer."
Well,
our
yeah,
kings."
exactly, right? Like, it's the culture. Like, they're literally not compatible with what we were trying to give them.
But
Or
what
trying
about
to
the
teach them, I should
idea
say.
that good ideas will always succeed?
I mean,
Like
is it
the
really a
best
good idea, though?
the best idea will always succeed, and that's exactly kind of what I'm trying to get at. Is democracy really the best option? Definitely not. But that's a different conversation, I think.
Well, no. Well, I mean, it really isn't. Like, look at how many people think the United States is a democracy. You know, not a constitutional republic, which is what we are.
I mean, there's definitely democratic principles embedded in our constitutional republic.
Well, yeah, because we're like an amalgamation, but I mean, full-blown democracies just they don't work, and we know they don't work. And especially in that region, like whoever has power is going to, what is it? I don't want to say they're going to oppress the other class, but they're going to basically do that.
So I remember this just came to mind. I remember hearing stories about like you go into this valley and in 2001, 2002, go into this valley and they start shooting at you and you finally get them to calm down. You ask them like why are you shooting at us? Like we're here to help you. Like you're not Taliban, so why are you shooting at us? And they're like, well, we thought you were the Soviets. And I wonder now.
Yeah.
The up north Afghanistan, there's the line of Pashtun or something like that, who was a local regional hero who basically fought off the Taliban post. He kind of established his own little claim. Now he did get murdered, but he had his own little claim. And when we went up there, by my understanding, they basically told us to fuck off. They said, "Hey, we've got this shit on lock," and in fact, they did. And so I wonder if now that the Taliban is decked out with all these fucking Mat Vs and 50 cals and
oh, dude, they're fucked.
they're
like
totally fucked, bro. It's terrible.
Yeah, like all right, like our MRAPs, they're designed to take RPGs. Well, there goes their entire anti-armor arsenal gone. And
no, some of our anti-armor capability is is at least usable in smaller projectiles. The whole way those nets work is it physically caught RPGs before the impact could cause the primer to actually go off.
No, I know that. What I mean is that the MRAPs, even the Buffaloes, they're like the Buffaloes are more or less designed for IEDs, but it's all compartments. Like when if you roll over an IED and the Buffalo, blows up, it basically protects the crew inside without, eviscerating you.
Yeah, so you can
easily
they're going to be rolled up on for sure.
Yeah, those people are they're I guess you can call them like the stowaways. They're definitely get it. But like we talked about this, like we already know what's coming next. It's going to be like the Afghan genocide. All those people, like you said conspirators, and I put conspirators in quotes because they're just going to kill anybody who they thought either helped us or sympathized with us. It doesn't matter. If you did anything with us, you're dead. Like 110%.
You know what made
If
me
you're
real
a
happy?
male, you're going to be either shot or hung in the street. If you have a son, he's going to be fucking brutally murdered in the street. And if you have a wife and a daughter, raped. 110%. That's exactly what's going to happen.
What are the odds that China steps in?
They'll wait till things have calmed down, and then they'll do what they've been doing in Africa. They're not going to extend an open hand or a rifle. They're going to extend money.
Well,
Hey,
but
let's be business partners.
China.
Now, the real question will be: will Taliban try to hold to its Islamic roots and try to, cast off those infidels as well? Will they reject a trade deal?
Yeah, I mean, like they're arguably relatively close to where all those Uyghur camps are. Not really. I mean, you got a whole Gobi Desert. But
Or will they do what the Mujahideen
They got a
did with the
desert.
U.S. during the Soviet invasion? Will they decide, I'll side with this devil now to fight a greater devil?
well, and see, that's what I'm thinking. Well, okay, so two things. One, China already owns all the mineral rights in Afghanistan. It's not valued super high, something like 1.4 trillion dollars, which, like, yeah, sounds real big, but who cares? Really, it's not even.
It's not. I mean,
It's not even
compared
one
to
GDP
like
of
the oil
America.
reserves and like, yeah, compared to like the oil reserves in
But
Saudi Arabia or anywhere else, really.
so basically, all this time we have been protecting China during their excavation because they are like bringing in Chinese workers to do this work. So,
Well, yeah.
so now is China
like-
going to have to step in militarily to protect those investments? That's really what I'm thinking.
They might have to. I mean, like the camp I was at, we had a dam down that was owned by the
Right.
Soviets, that was ran by the Soviets. And, I mean, we were basically pulling security for them, for the most part.
So if China does
Like-
step in militarily, then frankly, I won't lie, I will not be afraid of China anymore. If they do the same dumb shit the Soviets and we did, I'll be like, all right, fine, dude. You want to blow all your money, blow all your money.
You know what?
You guys are just as fucking
I
dumb as
think-
we are. Fuck it.
I think
But
if
you know
China
what?
steps
They
in,
would-
then there's two things they could do that they could succeed. One, go full-blown ancient Rome and just not give a shit what atrocities they commit while dominating the country. Because China doesn't care about
they
their own
already
people.
kill Muslims.
Yeah. Secondly, if they just limit their operations to just protecting their resources, and that's it, and it's just a security
that's what I was
outpost,
gonna
that's
say.
achievable.
They
That's
can
an
go-
achievable objective.
Oh, so we got to protect all
Yeah.
the roads too. We couldn't fucking keep Highway 1 clear.
But that's what I was
They
gonna
don't
say.
have to
Like, if
protect the
they
roads,
go
they have to
in,
protect the convoys on the road. That's all they have to do.
Part of that is protecting the roads because you don't want IEDs all over the fucking place.
I mean, that's true.
All right,
But
so here's another
Also,
option.
an easier win condition.
Here's another much more insane option. The Afghani population is 40 million. What is 40 million to China? And I'm not saying like genocide.
Nothing.
I'm saying
Absolutely nothing.
immigration, bro. Immigration en masse. Just fucking start. Do what the world claims that Israel does to Palestine, and just fucking send over 40 million fucking Chinese peasants. And they have 40 million peasants. Send them over. Fucking full demographic replacement. Now, is it crazy that the Jews saying this stuff? I don't know, man.
I mean, it is in your playbook.
It is in lots of people's playbooks throughout history.
And his nose grew 3 sizes that day.
Okay, look, I'm just saying, how in the world are Jews going to population replace anybody? There's only 15 million of us worldwide.
I think the replacement theory is that the Jews are the one leading the charge on the replacement, not the one physically doing the replacing. And they replace white Europeans with Africans and Middle Eastern.
Well, then those fuckers
Anyway.
at Charlottesville need to have a better chance because that's not what they're saying.
Jews will not replace us. I know what the plan was.
Anyway, I mean, that's possible. I mean, God only knows they have 40 million people that they don't give a flying fuck about, especially if they're peasants. And all you got to do is just be like, go do these opium farms. Like, that's all you really got over there.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Do you think with the Taliban gone, opium farming will increase or decrease?
Increase, probably.
Like that's
Because that would be their only...
the intuitive
I mean-
answer, I think. But you also gotta recognize that in 2001, prior to the invasion, Afghanistan supplied roughly like 13% of the world's poppy, and by 2008 or 2010, I forget which number, they were supplying like 80% of the world's poppy for opium. So
Well, yeah, because
under-
it's not help.
yeah,
So,
we
I
have
mean,
to grow
like...
poppy, bro. What the fuck? So with the
But,
Taliban in power now, will they grow less poppy?
I mean, it's possible, but at the same time, when you're 80% of the global economy for that, I don't think they're dumb enough to like produce less. That's free money right there.
Well,
You go up to your poppy.
They're going to grow more. The Taliban tried to ban it in 2000, but the people didn't like that because it's a huge market boost for the entire population.
Well,
They're not the
it's
ones
like the only
smoking it for the
fucking
most
thing
part.
that grows
And-
there anyway. So
Well, yeah, and also what happened to the demand for opium in the 20 years?
yeah, when it skyrocketed. But like, are
Yeah.
those things? Do they go hand in hand? Which one preceded the other? You know?
They go hand in hand. They definitely do. Although you can have a chicken or an egg argument, they certainly increased production to meet increased demand.
I mean, I
that's
could make
right,
the
and
argument that the Taliban weren't sophisticated enough to get their poppy fields to that point. So then when we invaded, we got them to that point.
Yeah, we
So
brought
now it's just
brought with us
now all they have to do is maintain.
we brought with us so much fertilizer that they not only could more than quadruple their poppy production, but they could also build all the IEDs they wanted.
Well, yeah, we kept bringing it over. Like, here, surely you guys won't grow this massively profitable drug. You'll instead grow soybeans.
Well, and the other
The
thing
U.S.
is,
government's like several tens of millions of dollars trying to introduce soybeans into the local diet for 4 years. From
I'm okay
2009 to
with
2013.
tens of millions of dollars being spent on something like that. Tens of millions of dollars
Right?
is
Because that's like,
nuts.
Well, if we
that's
spent
nothing.
a century
It's
replacing
literally
all
nothing.
their, if we spent a century replacing the Afghani diet with soy, we would have won. We would have won.
I think though that the real problem is that they so large portion, I'm not sure, but of the exact number, but a very large portion of their fields were being used to grow poppy. So where were they getting their food from? Well, I'm sure a lot of it was from foreign aid. It was probably being shipped from America and other places. So now that America's not there, and now that the Taliban's in charge, I'm sure that Afghanistan will start to suffer sanctions. And so will they be able to feed themselves without reverting and going back to growing less poppy and more food?
Will they suffer sanctions?
I
Biden
would-
Biden said that this wasn't going to be like Saigon.
Oh, holy shit, bro! They just clicked. What did Jen Psaki say like a week ago? The Taliban needs to figure out where they stand in the international scene or something like that. So that's basically an endorsement of a Taliban government.
Yeah, that's 100%. Well, like, all right, they were going to Kabul, right?
They knew this shit was happening.
Yeah, they were going to Kabul to negotiate transfer of power with the president, the Afghan president, who just left, which means they are now considered the legitimate government of Afghanistan, which is a fucking joke.
I don't know about that, because if we have the other guys, if we have that dude in our custody, if you will, then are we still endorsing him?
He's in Tajikistan.
Already
I don't know if
forego
we've
his
released
power.
him,
Like,
or if he's like being held by the U.S. embassy in Tajikistan, but he's not
they
in
should
the West.
just fucking execute him, but they should just execute him. Anyway,
Do you think he was a puppet
basically-
guy, or do you think that he was legitimately elected? Because we had
I think he was a puppet.
We had he was reelected like 8 times, wasn't he?
I think he was a puppet.
Yeah, wasn't he?
Well,
Or was it?
Think about it. I don't know if he was elected 8 times. I know he was quote unquote elected, but I mean, who was he running against? You're gonna run against some fucking dude who doesn't have the backing of anybody. Like, who are you going to vote for? The guy who has the backing of the U.S. government, or the dude who has nothing? I mean, obviously, if you're a Afghani living in, one of the major cities, you're going to support the guy who's going to have all the money. But even then, that's like a whole big thing where how, like, the money system we had in place was, like, fucked up from the get-go.
So, Ashraf Ghani actually did not hold power that long, from 2014 to yesterday, 6 years. The one before that actually worked with the Green Berets that were involved prior to the initial invasion of Afghanistan, the ones that were setting the conditions for it. He was one of the counterinsurgency leaders. I forget what the actual group was called, like the Northern Alliance. He was
Right.
one of the leaders of the Northern Alliance, Hamid Karzai. He was president for about 10 years.
That's who I was thinking about. I for some reason I thought it was the same. I guess I haven't been paying attention to Afghanistan since I left. My bad on not being prepared on that one. It does on the Wikipedia, and obviously not an official source necessarily. They have already listed Abdul Ghani Baradar as the incumbent since today. So he's
yeah, which is so. Yeah, the Taliban is technically considered the legitimate government of Afghanistan.
You'd have to define legitimate.
Yeah, I like recognized by the UN is kind of like that's going to take some.
They're not going to be accepted by the.
I mean, look at how the UN reacts with fucking not Pakistan, goddamn Gaza.
Well, it's it took them a long time, but they have like what, one seat now or something like that. They can send like one rep.
But Gaza's right, but they're not a real fucking country. Like what? How the fuck you got a seat? You're not even like you're allowed to exist.
Yeah. I don't want to get started in on that because I have nothing.
No, I know. I was gonna say if anyone comes at us for that, I will gladly sit there and listen to whatever they have to say. But just so they know, it's bullshit. They're not a real fucking country, and they don't deserve a goddamn seat anywhere.
Well, hold on.
A bunch of fucking terrorists.
I struggle with what you're saying because they don't really deserve a seat, but the institution doesn't really deserve to exist. Of the UN. Like, I don't give a fuck what the UN has to say one way or another.
That's also another thing altogether. I mean, the UN's been utterly worthless since, I don't know, Korea? What is that, 10 years after they were formed? Probably less, right?
Yep.
I mean, in all reality, the UN is us, right? So if we take an interest in something, the UN just writes a fucking angry letter, and it ultimately falls down on us, the United States, to turn around and be like, no, get fucked, we're going to invade.
I wish we would stop doing that.
Yeah, I agree. Because, it all, again, falls down into, like, the win conditions. We keep going into these, I guess, conflicts, wars, whatever you want to call them, but we keep going into them without a win condition. Like, you could look at Korea, right? We went in there, and once the Chinese got involved, we literally didn't know what to do. Now, don't get me wrong, MacArthur at the time, even though they all thought he was insane, was willing to nuke China. Should he have nuked China? Maybe?
Yes. Unequivocally, yes.
Well, I don't know about for Korea. I do think that basically all of these problems would have been solved if we just listened to Patton and continued marching east once Hitler gave up.
Oh, easily. I mean, we could easily go that far back and go to the point where this all could have stopped if we kept going to Moscow.
We could go back even farther and say if we, as in the U.S. and UK, had just stayed out of World War I, none of this would have happened.
Yeah, fuck yeah, that's right.
I mean,
yeah, we
think
can go
about it.
that
Like,
far back.
okay, let Germany win in World War One. They weren't like outright evil at the time. If the Nazis weren't involved.
Well,
That's
not even
really a
that.
thing
It
yet.
would
So,
resolve the situation in the Middle East too. Like the
yeah,
whole reason why the Middle East is fucked is because of England after World War One.
that's part
Like
of the reason. Yeah, I was gonna
they,
say, there would have been no trying to make Israel an independent state because Holocaust would have never happened, and so the Middle East wouldn't be perpetually mad at the West because of the existence of Israel. And on top of that, maybe the Middle East would have naturally fractured along tribal lines instead of foreign countries trying to arbitrarily set boundaries based on whatever empires they had.
well, yeah,
Well, like
they would have became like separate states.
here's a real
Like, you
dumb
wouldn't-
question, but like, yeah, borders are arbitrary lines on a piece of paper. Okay,
Yeah.
completely. So why do rather the lines that we drew still fucking exist? Why didn't they just divide naturally into tribal lines and basically tell everybody to fuck off and kill? They just do the
Well,
natural cycle.
in
Because they're
Afghanistan, it
petty.
essentially did. It's just the world didn't recognize it. The Pashto and Tajiks in Afghanistan fucking despise each other. So to them, it did. It's just that some economic reality.
don't recognize it.
Yeah, the world doesn't recognize it, and some economic realities kind of make it difficult to live exclusively with your tribes. Sometimes you're kind of stuck as a Pashto in the middle of a Tajik area because it's where you can find work.
But
I mean, you can find work wherever you create work. It's you can be productive anywhere.
especially over
Do you
there.
think a country that's regularly malnourishing its children because it's spending too much of its crops on poppy instead of food is going to make smart
Hey,
decisions
no.
as a
I
whole?
mean, and maybe not. maybe not in
I
that
just shared an
generation.
article. No, I just shared an article in the information dump. According to the FAO, Afghanistan relies heavily on international aid to meet its basic nutritional needs. This is despite having a relatively large amount of arable land and the capacity to actually feed their own population if their crop yields were dedicated towards foodstuffs.
Yep.
Hey,
Their number
man,
one crop
you can't
is
be
wheat.
hungry if you're high. All right.
It's pot.
Wrong.
Number one is pot.
Can confirm. Oh, wheat, not weed.
Oh, okay.
Wheat, as in bread.
I was gonna say, damn. Like, I mean, they call it Kush, right?
So
I mean,
I
it's
would
also
like
like
to point out that our 20-year failure in Afghanistan to achieve anything long term is a extreme demonstration of the second commandment of political warfare: never attack what you're not willing to kill. We went into the war with kid gloves for most of the time.
we had zero intention to annihilate an ideology, which is, I mean, all right, how do you kill an ideology? You have to eradicate it. You can't just let it exist.
You either commit a literal genocide or an ideological one. One
Yeah,
is a lot
exactly.
quicker than the other. One has a lot less blood on your hands, but takes a lot more time.
Could you argue that that we tried to do the ideological genocide? We just, one, didn't try hard enough, and two, obviously weren't prepared to stay there for long enough since we're
No,
not gone.
because the last time we tried an ideological suicide, or ideological genocide, we then resorted to half a century of white guilt over our attempt at ideological suicide against the American Indians. We now get the epic bad feels about indoctrinating American Indian kids into Western culture by forcing them into boarding schools, punishing them if they spoke their native languages, punish them if they tried to practice any of their cultural rights, any of that, because we were trying to, quote, kill the Indian and save the man. Tried it with them against a small group that was within our own borders that we had total control of and couldn't do it because, we have a conscience and guilt and shit.
Oh, I mean, but like that's not necessary for doing all that stuff by force is not necessary for an ideological genocide. That only builds resentment. That's what the Russians did to the Jews prior to World War
okay.
One.
So if you don't do it through force, right, you're gonna need, like Dotson said, a century.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, look at a vast majority of American Jews that emigrated post Holocaust. A vast majority of them are assimilated as fuck. There a small minority of them, are not.
I mean, they're also under the assumption that FDR really liked them, even though he's the one who, banned them from immigrating to America during the Holocaust. But whatever.
Yeah, my grandpa didn't even get in immediately. Like he tried America before he went to South America, and he couldn't even get in post-war.
But
Are you sure your grandpa was on the side of the long nose and tiny hat and drive? He's moving to South
are
America
you
after World
sure
War
he was
II?
on the right
Sounds really
side?
suspicious.
Yeah, no, he went to Ecuador. Went to
I was
Ecuador.
gonna say,
That's-
did he go to
He ended up
Argentina and shit?
he went to Ecuador. He ended up in Colombia, and then he went to Jacksonville, and then he went to New York, and then he went to San Francisco, then he went to Los Angeles, and that's
Wow,
where
it
he
just
died.
went all downhill from there.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
He
yeah.
started at Holocaust and it only got worse.
It only got worse. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I don't know, dude. He was in LA after San Francisco, so maybe there was a tiny bit of an upgrade there.
When was San Francisco though?
Early
really
'60s.
Okay, San Francisco, like, it had its iffy spots in the 60s and 70s, but it wasn't bad.
What it
only
is
started to get
now.
bad during the 90s, during the first
Yeah.
tech boom.
When I went to New York City, I went and visited where my dad was like an infant and toddler, and I would not live there now. Like, and neither would my dad, neither would my grandpa. It's just not a safe place to be.
What,
where
did
he grew up.
Zohan move out of the neighborhood and stop cutting hair there?
I mean, basically.
Yeah, I mean, like they got demographically replaced, basically.
They got reverse gentrified.
Yeah,
Well,
that's exactly what. Yeah, exactly.
It's not even like Democrat. Like, I mean, they were, but it's also because Jews aren't really welcomed in New York City.
Or
It's like
Or
really
which
fucking
is weird because like the best food that New York City has is bagels, and that's an explicitly Jewish thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Anyone who says
really.
New York pizza is the best pizza can go fucking kill themselves. I don't care if we get demonetized for that. Chicago style deep dish is the best pizza.
You're
and then, like literally every other form of pizza is below that, and then New York style pizza is like somewhere in the basement, getting fucking beat in a gimp suit while bent over at hobby horse.
You gotta say that while you gotta say that while
here.
No, Nazgirl's here. She'll fucking.
Does she like New York style pizza?
She loves it.
It's like wet cardboard with no toppings on it.
I mean, to be honest, like I don't know what kind of pizza I like, dude. I get the pizza at Papa John's. I dig it, bro.
I know. Slovenian pizza.
I got pizza. I don't know what I like.
Like I like pizza, right? We all three of us here know that I have a particular affection towards pizza. I don't know what kind of fucking pizza I'm eating, dude.
I remember when the Army stopped my pay when we were in New York still, and you let me hang out in your room and eat your leftover pizza.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Because like I just got married and I had no money because the Army stopped my pay for 6 weeks. And when I did eventually get a loan from AER, I had enough money to where we were able to pay our rent plus security deposit and then buy some food. But my wife and I were sharing a pack of ramen for dinner, a single pack. Or we were buying a pizza from the Stewart's gas station down the road that was like $4. It was large, and making that last 2 whole days between the two of us.
Mills.
Dude, please don't mention his name. Fuck him. We should send him over to try and rescue the interpreters.
Well, all right. So
just send him over with all LARPing gear.
Right?
Yeah,
like that's like another failure. Now this is where I'll actually agree that this might fall under, I guess you could call it Biden's legacy, right? You have all those people who helped us during the war, who will 100% be executed by the Taliban if they stay. And Biden's plan was basically, the Afghan army will give us time. Like, that was just his plan, was that we'll have time. Meanwhile, all of us...
I thought Biden's plan was, I'm going to go get some ice cream, you handle this.
Well, I mean, probably.
And by you, I mean he's probably talking to his TV.
Yeah, he was talking. He was talking
no. I'm looking it up now. He actually gave responsibility to Afghanistan during the pullout to Hunter Biden.
Oh my God!
I'm kidding. That's not real, but it's believable.
No, I know it's not real. I mean, shit, it could be. You never really know.
There's opium here. Let's smoke, guys.
So, in regards to like why the ANA wasn't able to give them enough time,
they didn't have the will to fight.
So okay,
the ones that had the will to fight were already working for the Taliban, or like went over to the Taliban really quick.
It's a bunch of. Well, it's interesting because I'm gonna cite a study from France, of the Muslim population in France, and they're talking like asking questions like, would you be willing to do a suicide bombing for jihad or to fulfill fatwa or something like that, and like an overwhelming majority says no, I would not be. I would absolutely not be. And then like the questions go on. One of the next questions is something to the effect of, would you like, are you sympathetic towards somebody who does do a suicide bombing for the sake of
Isn't
jihad?
this during when they were getting all those the Syrian refugees,
It
right?
was prior to that, actually. It was like 2010 is when this
Oh,
survey
okay,
was
okay.
released, and like 65% of these people surveyed are saying, yeah, I would be sympathetic if it fulfilled something that I thought was like a reasonable jihad or a fatwa. I am in support of that in an effort to make that happen. So if that's the Muslim population in a first world Western country, first world I use loosely, this France, piece of shit. So imagine what the sentiment is in somewhere like Afghanistan or Iraq, where 63% in this Western place
Well,
where.
I don't know. I don't
So
remember who conducted the survey, but with the Syrian refugees, they asked similar questions, and it was like something like 90% kind of like agreed with ISIS. They just didn't want to, be caught in the crossfire, which, you might sit there and be like, oh wow, 90%, but like I don't think people understand that Muslim, like the culture in general, is largely like hyper conservative. So,
right.
like, for them to be like, yeah, no, I kind of agree with them. It's not like out of the norm for them. So, I guess the better question to ask is, how many Afghanis did we train were Taliban sympathizers? And
Exactly, and you see all
I
the
would
time.
probably argue a majority.
I think that's exactly right. We've said before in our chats that it was a bunch of cowards versus a bunch of fanatics. I'm going to change that. I actually think it's a bunch of fanatics versus a bunch of people who are sympathetic to the fanatics.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Don't really have much of a fight when it's.
the
Our
only
sport
guys,
analogy.
It's on the
the
same
only guys
side.
who I
If the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing against their own fans, do you think the fans are going to be trying to score points against the Steelers all that much?
Or yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're not gonna, they're not gonna fucking fight their own people.
And you kind of actually even see that within the American Army. You hear stories all the time about how people joined explicitly to bring back gang tactics to their hometown in the inner cities. To bring back military tactics to their gangs. Excuse me.
Yeah, I saw stories about that.
Yeah, I've heard
Or
that.
building
Yeah.
connections with armorers and eventually trying to steal weapons and sell them.
I mean, how
Basically,
many night
they
vision
joined a
goggles
bigger
went missing?
organization. Yeah, they joined a bigger organization just to benefit their own little tribal element.
Well, yeah, they joined the biggest gang in the world to help better their own gang, right? The army is the unions of gangs, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to definitely look at it.
Is our 20-year occupation of Afghanistan a demonstration of hate? Despite all of our supposedly good intentions to bring democracy, was it hate filled? And I think that if you take the inverse of it and say a demonstration of love that is fueled or has a hateful impact or is fueled by hate, I definitely think it meets the criteria.
Yeah, I don't think it fits. Cause like, we went in there for Bin Laden, right? That was our end goal.
That was our
Then
initial justification. Then it was clear by 2002 that he was in Pakistan. But we basically
I
pretended
think it was.
either we pretended he was in Afghanistan the entire time because we're blind, or we didn't want to go into Pakistan because we lacked the political will to tell another country who was allegedly our allies, hey, this dude who killed 2,000 of our people is hiding in our country. Think you can fucking do something about that? Because if not, we're going to find him and we're going to nuke his house.
Well, basically, that was the big thing, right? Like, the Taliban crossed the border into Pakistan, and Pakistan refused to give us the, military authority, or not the military authority, but they refused to give us.
They refused to
cross
cooperate.
the border. Yeah, so that's like aiding and abetting terrorists, and
At the same time, they're a
like,
sovereign nation.
yeah, right. it's like we kind of fuck people up for that. So why aren't we fucking them up?
Because they're a much more difficult fight.
Yeah, they are a nuclear power, and on top of that, like on the flip side of it, the entire Western world did ignite over one dude killing an archduke and then like basically hiding back in his home country, or his co-conspirators hiding in the home country, and that group not handing him over. You think that Pakistan would have at the very least like, you know, we like the Al Qaeda and we like Osama bin Laden. We also like not being a nuclear ash pile more, and let's just give him this one.
Well,
but that's also expecting reasonableness out of an Islamic republic, air quotes on republic.
Yeah, you can't. Really you can't sell out your brother to
alien
heretics.
Mindset.
But yeah, as for like a demonstration of hate or demonstration of love, I don't think it fits. Well, no, maybe for like the demonstration of hate, because we did go in there to kill somebody.
Well, I think even the demonstration of love, because there was the rationale for a long time for both this war and Iraq, was that we were going to bring democracy to these areas that have never had democracy, and we're going to make them first world countries. Basically, was what the argument was.
Okay, yeah, you know what? I agree with that, because that was, that's what we did try to do, and I'm thinking of it from the perspective of like it was just never going to happen. So yeah, I probably have to change the way I'm thinking on that. But yeah, I guess we could say it's from love as well. Because I mean, we did try to do the right thing, right? We tried to bring them into the modern age, I guess is what you can say, instead of, being a bunch of goat fuckers.
and in one respect, we did bring them into the modern age. Look at all that at that medium tech military equipment they have now.
Right? Like I already pointed out, right?
Y'all are mad Dotson, you're mad all the time that Israel gets all this money to buy all this stuff, and
meanwhile, these motherfuckers get it for free.
Yeah. Just fucking pre-used.
Yeah, I think Israel is actually entirely capable of taking care of itself at this point. If you're telling me they lack the capacity to manufacture their own arms and ammunition and equipment at this point,
I mean they do.
I'm telling you, it's a 12 million strong population with like 400 million people who want to kill them surrounding them.
Hey, with minimal aid, they kicked like 6 different countries' asses within like a week of founding, didn't they?
Which, by the way, that whole thing, the whole 6-day war,
Syria, Egypt.
The whole 6-day war is foreshadowing for how the army, the ANA would react. Like, obviously, Afghanistan did not participate in the 6-day war, but like as we said, it's a culture thing, right? And this is kind of spread across the entire area. They ultimately they don't want to fight. Even like the Yom Kippur War, where they invaded on the holiest day in Judaism, and they did a number on Israel at first. It really looked like Israel was going to lose that war, but even with that huge like blitzkrieg advantage, they still couldn't keep it up, and they still gave up and lost land. So
I mean, yeah, I guess we could say that, they don't really have the will to fight, which is kind of weird, right? Because they're perfectly fine with blowing themselves up, which you would assume they have the will to fight.
Well, I think the mindset is to tear down the opponent's will to fight, and you do that with suicide bombing.
Maybe they're just too fucking malnourished, to keep fighting. They're only good for like a few days, and then after that, they're kind of, that's it, tapped out.
Oh, combat requires lots of random yet sustained bursts of energy and effort. Suicide bombing just requires one, if it goes right.
Or maybe the malnourishment just causes smooth brainness, like in pregnancy and in vitro, or not in vitro, in utero.
I mean, it actually literally does.
Yeah. So maybe that's the problem with the whole area, is they're just underfed. Maybe if we just give them all of our crops, they'll turn into the new America.
We tried to give them soy, and they said no. We'd rather fuck goats and grow poppy.
I don't blame them though. Soy kind of sucks.
I think I would rather fuck goats than
I think I'd rather
soy
fucking
as a
die.
significant part of my diet. Soy has 2 roles in my diet: soy sauce and teriyaki, and it's only when I make Asian food. That's it.
I don't know when I eat soy.
But yeah, no, it's Afghanistan.
So how much more bloodshed do you think is gonna happen here?
All right,
Are we measuring in gallons or years?
right?
Let's do years. I think that's much more easy to understand.
This is the war that never ends, and it goes on, my friends. Yeah, that's gonna be it.
What Biden's
Now,
got?
American
3
blood?
years left.
American blood, there's not going to be much more. I really don't think Biden's going to spend much more in there, other than to secure the evac of the embassy personnel and U.S. civilians.
I'm going to strictly talk about Afghani blood. I don't think we're going to have any more blood on our hands because our people are already out. Like the 82nd's already pulled out. All U.S. Personnel and whatever Terps we pulled out, right?
We didn't even send the 82nd as part of that 5,000 strong response unit.
The 82nd was at the airfield.
They might have already been there because the list of units I saw was like a Marine battalion, an infantry support company that wasn't 82nd, and then like an artillery group from the Iowa National Guard.
Yeah, the 82nd came in with the fucking C10s, right? The Galaxies. Anywho's, all right. So we'll count the bloodshed from yesterday, right? Right, or yesterday morning, whatever fucking day it was. So you got the dudes who fell off the planes as they were taking off. Every single one of those fucking men, women, children that were on that airfield, 100% are going to be fucking killed. And then it goes back to what Ethan was saying with conspirators, right? It's going to be conspirators in quotes. It's going to be anybody who did anything with us is going to die. You know, like what is their population right now?
40 million.
It would be a low ball, but I'm going to say maybe 5 million dead by the end of Biden's term.
Nah.
They lack the industrial capacity to kill that many that quickly.
Bro,
that requires rounding people up and like an industrial assembly line process of murder.
Hold on 1 second. We've already seen them execute Afghani commandos on multiple occasions.
Yeah. So they have the willingness to do it. Do you think that the Taliban is more or less capable than Nazi Germany? And if so, by what factor? Because what you're suggesting is that they need to be at least 1/3 as capable as Nazi Germany.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say. I don't think they would round people up. I think it would just be more or less like home-to-home executions. You know what I mean? Like, kind of like how they did it before we were there, which is still really fucked up. I mean, it basically falls down to if you weren't with us, you're against us.
I think that some other nation would step in, or America would step right the fuck back in if that scale was coming to pass.
This is where, you know, tinfoil hat time comes in. I think this is not preparing, but it's setting up the stage for another armed conflict with our involvement.
Well, sure. Right? I mean, that's kind of...
Look at all the shit they took out from, Kabul, Bagram, all our military equipment. They now have MRAPs, ARGs, Humvees, drones, God knows how many fucking firearms, ammunition for those firearms, and basically they have all this equipment now, right? So we now just, you know, indirectly, quote unquote, armed a bunch of fanatics with weapons, like those drones, right? The drones that we left there, you know, they have a 1,500 kilometer range, right? All those fucking dudes have to do is get on a fucking boat, and you know they're crafty motherfuckers. They're gonna strap goddamn explosives on that shit, and they now have kamikaze drones. And they can
which
hit.
they can't reproduce, so they have a limited number of them.
Well, yeah,
And
but
who are they going to start a war with?
But it
Fucking-
also falls. It falls down into like with 9/11, right? All they have to do is target the right thing, and that's it.
I don't think that a Predator drone with even strapped full of explosives would be able to do what those 747s did to the Twin Towers.
Well, that's also a debate for, that's also something else. Anyway, so all right, you have all of that, right? But it's definitely like manufacturing a humanitarian crisis. Like I keep saying that the UN by the end of Biden's term is an equality humanitarian crisis that's gonna need our involvement. And I mean, that's like the reality of it. Like that's exactly what it's gonna be. And
I just don't see how that is politically viable.
it's not. Because like, all right, what's gonna happen, right? You got a humanitarian crisis. What are we gonna do? Go back in there and do what we just did for the past 20 years, which basically, turned into like we did nothing for 20 years, right? Our upper chain of command, all that did nothing. They ended up like us individually. We ended up doing a lot of stuff, but in like the big picture, we didn't do anything. Like
sure,
it didn't matter that we pulled security for kids, and this was like their first time ever getting a public education. And that's like a big deal, right? Or at least we think it is.
Meh.
And at the end of the day, it literally took less than a month for that to like not mean anything, which is absolutely fucking insane.
Well, you talked about how you didn't think that there was going to be any American blood on the field because we're out, but then Tinfoil Hat you described basically blowback in that they're going to.
Well, all right. So I'm talking about Biden's term, right? Those 3 year, like, what is it, 3 years now? That's all he's got left?
We all know he's not lasting that long.
Well, yeah, okay. If it doesn't happen before he's out, I mean, if it happens before he's out, I'd be fucking impressed. But as of right now, I do not believe we'll be back anytime soon. I don't even think. I mean, we might have special forces in there, but even then, I doubt it, because that would imply that we have some kind of.
Well, I'm going to operate on the assumption that those dudes have the potential to be anywhere at any time, even in places where they're not necessarily supposed to be. I
mean, that's fair, but do we have any freedom fighters in there anymore?
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's still people that do not want the Taliban in charge. But this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like last podcast, I think it was, where like if you have all these disparate groups of of people who don't want to get vaccinated, right? But are perfectly willing to defend themselves. Well, like what does it matter if you have one home defending themselves at a time, right? That's a battle you're going to lose almost every time. And if you got like 100 people, like mob of 100 at your door trying to kill you. So you might have, I think you do have a shit ton of people still in Afghanistan that do not want the Taliban in charge, but aren't willing to take on the fight by themselves. And obviously the government completely failed them.
Well, even then, like the Green Berets operate as a force multiplier, right? They get freedom fighters to get more freedom fighters, build a force behind enemy lines and assist them that way. What I mean is I don't think we have that goodwill anymore. Like, think about it. We literally just abandoned them.
Yeah. Yeah, we fucking did.
Like, I don't think that goodwill that we had initially stands anymore. Like, what are they going to do? Go up to these people and be like, oh, hey, you want our help? And it's going to be like, no, you didn't fucking help us before, and you literally fucking promised. Like, that's a slap in the face to the SF community. You know, those dudes, what is that? The first 4 years they were in Afghanistan by themselves before Big Army got involved. And we basically shit the bed.
Yeah, I mean, like the war in Afghanistan was won within like 8 months. I mean, Operation Anaconda did exactly what it was supposed to do. It completely displaced the Taliban from all the power places, and that's all we. That was the win condition. You say we don't have one. I understood that Operation Anaconda fulfilled that win condition,
It's
and we
that
should have just fucking left.
It's that we just kept changing the win condition, which is fucked up. Like, we should have never
shifting the
done that.
goalposts.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we like with the whole COVID thing, right? We keep moving the goalpost, and eventually you have to ask yourself, when did we move the goalpost too far? Right?
The moment we moved it past the first one we set.
Exactly, right? So Operation Anaconda, right? Displaced Taliban from their positions of power. Guess what? We did it. Congratulations. Hands are clean. We should have fucking just left, especially since at that time we knew Bin Laden wasn't in Afghanistan. So
the funny thing is, if we had been worried about civil war, well, Afghanistan had just got out of a civil war that ended in 2001, and they just had a civil war before that. It ended in 1996, and another one before that in 1992, and another one before that, that started in 1989 after the Soviets left. If they're not fighting another country, they're fighting each other, because what we call civil war, we call tribal conflicts.
And the Taliban won the most recent civil war, so we aren't happy with that that win for the Taliban. So we go in, we displace them, we leave again, and then bam, it's another civil war. It's another chance for the quote right people to win the civil war. Like, I don't understand why we had to stick around and try to manufacture the right people winning it.
Well, it's because
we
wanted to
all their
bring
civil wars into our way of fighting civil war, which the American way is we do it the ballot box every 2 to 4 years. But we're a more culturally cohesive country than Afghanistan is, because we have a national identity we cling on to. The Afghanis largely don't.
Fucking nation states aren't real, bro. So I do think, though, that they are only going to fight themselves. I don't think that Iran or Pakistan is going to fuck around with Afghanistan, primarily because I think China does have a vested interest there. So I think that China is really the only player on the table that I think has any potential reason to get involved. I mean, it's not like Afghanistan has access to a coast or anything, and their entire southern area is garbage.
I mean, they are the only ones with an invested interest, but even like you pointed out, it's not really worth anything. So, like, what did you say, 1.6 trillion?
I think it was 1.4.
or 1.4. Like, what does that really mean for the Chinese? Right? I don't think it really means all that much. So they might just say fuck it and abandon it altogether, which would be pretty interesting. Not too sure how that would play out.
I think they would probably try to buy off the Taliban in regards to protecting their investments. Hell, just promise the Taliban you'll help them get their opium smuggled around the world.
Boom, yeah, right, so that's a good point. So when it comes to all this equipment that they jacked, like, okay, I don't think that the MATVs necessarily have a GPS built into them, but for sure, like the Predator, like these big drones, they all have GPSs built into them, right? Yeah, they've got to.
You want to know it's funny? That's considered one of our sensitive items, and we pull those out.
See, well, and like that's the other thing I'm wondering is, like, did we render all of these things unusable before we? Because, like, I imagine that the GPS in the drones is kind of sort of imperative to the actual command and control of the drone.
Yeah, it absolutely needs the GPS system to function. Otherwise, it just goes off on its own.
I mean, it's hard to really say how they left those vehicles. Because, again, right, we left Bagram in the middle of the night without saying a word. Did we really strip all those vehicles of their sensitive items?
I don't know. We've had like 6 months to be doing this stuff.
I mean,
like
maybe. But it would have been smarter to keep that shit in there. That way, you could play little fucking predator drone strikes and be like, oh look, that shit's moving. Erase it off the fucking map.
If it were me, if I were in charge of that last bit of the withdrawal, I would 100% leave like 1,500, 2,000 troops in Bagram. But before I send everybody else home, I would take fucking tractors and bulldoze the fuck out of the tent city that's outside of the gates, and I would just have fucking killing fields for a couple hundred meters, and then just put 1,500 people there, have all that sensitive equipment, which the Taliban wants, and have it basically there as like bait, and then you fucking just dump on them all day because they're never gonna get through.
Well, like even you
said, didn't do that.
They should have just rigged all the shit to blow up.
100%.
Like,
yeah,
I mean,
drop a couple Moabs on Bagram at the end of after everybody pulls out.
Right? Like that. That's exactly what they should have done. But no, the Afghani president's like, nope, fuck it, we're leaving. And it's like, oh, okay, you fucking goddamn bitch.
Well, the Afghanis should have done that to the presidential palace. We, America, should have done that to Bagram. One way or the other. We should have stayed and defended it as like a last place, and basically like a fucking manpower sump, a sump for the Taliban to send their people to die at.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, you even said it. Like, they should, flattened it, torched it, literally just fucking nothing. Absolutely nothing. We should have never have left anything in Bagram.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying, all of this all together violates rule number 10. Play offensive. And our posture in Afghanistan was
largely defensive.
After Operation Anaconda was so successful, we played defensive the rest of the time.
And it's just it's a shame. It's just really what it is. Like, I know I mentioned it, like how it, rubs me wrong. Because, like, again, right? We, watched kids go to their first day school ever. I had buddies who helped build a school and shit, give medical aid and all that shit, right? Like, we did good things over there, and to watch it just, get thrown away, it sucks. I mean, granted, were they ever going to, like, defend it? No. I mean, it would be a fucking lie if I sat there and said, no, this shit could have lasted. Like, no, it wouldn't have. I mean, if we stayed there for maybe... Well, not even stayed there. No, fuck that. We should have just culturally annihilated the culture there.
Well, what we should have done is annexed it state by state.
Make it a state.
But no, I mean, like within the country, basically shut off an area completely and don't allow anybody in or out. And annex that, spend 20 years annexing that, and then do the next one, and then the next one. Because Afghanistan is way too big, its population is way too disparate for us to really
not even do that. We just, annex the more, not more important places, but the places that could, like, self-sustain itself.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather have never gone in at all. I never understood why. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna say never because I joined the fucking army. If I never understood, I never would have joined the fucking army. But I don't understand why
we stayed as long as we did.
Why Big Army ever had to get involved? It should have been SF groups.
Well, that was like the thing, right? It was just like the big dick move. There's no reason why Big Army should have gotten involved. The SF community went in there with a win condition and achieved it within less than a year. And then Big Army turned around and was like, whoop, time to fucking move that win condition just a tiny bit, and then fucked it all up. Like, the ALP wasn't supposed to be a uniformed force. Big Army made it a uniformed force. And it just, like, we basically painted targets on all those people's backs. just because big armies are like generals are retarded, I guess, is the one way to like really look at it.
They all want to be remembered as Caesar, you know, the man who brought the native population to heel.
Right? And now look at where they're going to be remembered as.
Do you guys have any pertinent stories that foreshadowed this whole shenanigans? I've got one. If you need to think about it, I was stationed out in kind of the boonies, safe. They were pretty safe boonies. I think that base was renowned for having never been attacked. The only SF outpost in all of Afghanistan, and or something to that effect. And I was there for 3 weeks, and I almost got to go on this really cool mission. And I was gonna go actually have an opportunity to maybe shoot my gun. I know, it's crazy. And the conditions that needed to be fulfilled for us to actually go on this mission were to have 100 ANA Rangers show up voluntarily at 5 p.m. tonight. And out of, you know, we needed 100, and there was potentially, from what I understand, roughly 500 people that could have been picked up, and we had 20 or so ANA Rangers show up. So I did not get to go on my mission because like 5%, give or take, of the potential people to show up and do this thing, and it would have like been to remove a high value target that would have brought a lot more supposedly stabilization to the region, so on and so on and so on. There's a lot of good reasons to do this thing, and we couldn't even get fucking more than 20% of the necessary amount, less than or roughly 5% of the total available amount to actually just show up to do this mission.
Actually, no, I actually have a story. Kind of not similar to that. It was, we were rolling into I don't know if you want to call it a city, but it was Tagab. They fucking hated us there. Actually shot a 320 into someone's backyard and they got very angry. Anyway, so we were going in there. There was supposed to be an HVT in the area. Like, we had tangible intel, the whole nine. But this was at the time where we were not allowed to enter buildings. It had to be Afghanis. So we roll up in there, and it was like pulling teeth to get them to enter the buildings. It took us almost a solid 6 hours to get them to enter and clear 3 structures. Which is ridiculous. Like, that is absolutely fucking insane. And it was all because they didn't want to do it. They wanted us to do it for them. And I'm sure, like, Dotson probably has a similar story. Because it definitely isn't, like, one of those minority situations. It's definitely happened a lot while we were over there.
Closest I have to a story of foreshadowing this. If you guys remember the elections that happened around April when we were there, 2014.
Yeah, we pulled security for that too.
Rockets were hitting the district center right next to us because we were the actual district stability platform right outside of it. And the SF team did some investigating, and they found out who was directing the rockets. I'm sitting in our little half tent where we ate chow. I'm just eating one of my snacks. I whipped up together some nacho chips, some like turkey, some provolone cheese, some sauce on top of it. Gave me everything I needed, and I liked it at the time. And suddenly, I see the 18 Fox of the team, one of the only 3 Mormons on the site, me being one of them at the time, just dragging the local police chief in, slams him against the table, and puts a fucking handgun to his head. They start screaming at him in Arabic or in Pashto or some shit. And I'm just like, I'm witnessing a war crime right now. I'm gonna go. I just left with my food and ate in my tent. They're like, I get into the tent. They're like, "What are you doing?" SF dude's interrogating the police chief right now. Like, okay.
It's like, I don't want to witness that.
Yeah, because it turns out the police chief was the one directing the rockets onto the district capital.
Now, do you think
that's not a surprise?
Do you think that they're sympathetic to the Taliban, or do you think they're just corrupt as fuck and easily bribable?
You go past bribes when you're the one directing rockets. It's one thing to allow smuggling. That's where the bribery comes in. But deliberately killing the people you're supposed to protect, that tells me you ain't working for the people you claim to be working for.
True.
That goes beyond sympathies. That goes to embedded agent.
Yeah, I was gonna say that goes to the point where like that guy was Taliban. Like, like he definitely should have just been shot. Actually, no, we had a similar, not a similar situation, but we had a guy who was, he was like in charge of the ALP. He was like a local warlord. He was the guys that the SF dudes put in charge of that because the region respected him, and he ended up getting like voted out or whatever. And the new guy that took over for him was like 100% Taliban.
So I don't know if you guys saw this. I just saw the article post while we were discussing this. The U.S. State Department is planning to, with the DoD, house thousands of Afghan refugees, up to like 30,000, on Fort McCoy in Wisconsin and Fort Bliss in Texas. And they said they're basically just going to grab whoever they can, who seems like they want to go, and then sort out whether or not they're supposed to be here later. So
I feel like that's a dangerous precedent. Like we should have we definitely should have had that shit sorted out
but the way they're
before.
to describe it, they're hoping it's going to be mostly some of the special immigrant visa applicants of the Afghanis. So maybe, I don't know, some of our interpreters that are still there see that this plane's going to happen, and they just wait until one of the planes starts to come in and then book it for the plane.
Well, didn't one of your Terps get like lit on fire by the Taliban at one point?
I don't remember that. Of the three I remember, two are out. One's in Austria, and I think one came to the U.S., and the third one wrote to me like a week or two ago. Like as soon as the U.S. put out a Bagram.
I saw Calderas post something about it. Like, I don't know if it was recent, but he was like lit on fire or whatever. But like him and his, wife and children are still over there. Which is like fucked, right? Like those are people that put in their visas and were denied, which is fucking ridiculous to begin with. Like,
it's because I don't really know why, but I believe it's probably because the American government couldn't hire enough, and so they had to find reasons to keep the ones that they had, and the only way to really do that is to just deny the visa over and over again.
Right, well, but like
the one I wrote about to my congressman, he was denied recently, like shortly before the pullout, and he hadn't been an interpreter for the U.S. for a little while. He stopped.
But that also shows like the disconnect with upper leadership. Everything from, I guess you could say, captain and up, right? Like, how did they not know that these people were gonna be targets?
They do. Like, they just don't give a fuck.
Right? Like, that's just what it comes down to. Like, they just don't fucking care. Like, everyone knew that if those people stayed in country, they will die once we left. Like, so, that wasn't a question. That was, like, a known fact. And what did we do? We left them there. We denied their visas. Which is, like, really fucked up.
I remember, I don't remember where I saw it, but I've looked it up a little bit. Tons and tons of articles. A lot of them seem like clones of each other, but tons and tons of articles reading something like Taliban commander claims he spent 8 years in Guantanamo Bay, and that was published earlier today, New York Press News. Tons of articles, exact clones of stuff like that. And to me, like, I'm not gonna read the fucking articles. I don't give a shit if this dude spent 8 years in Guantanamo. Guantanamo is not necessarily a good place. Don't think it was used the way it was meant to be used. But what I see when I see these headlines is basically apologists already for the Taliban, basically saying they have the right to rule because America pushed all these atrocities onto them.
Yeah, I can see that. Actually, what's funny about the whole Guantanamo Bay thing is, like, that ultimately goes back to Obama.
Actually,
For sure goes way farther than that.
the specific guy you're talking about, Taliban commander, where did his name go? Ghulam Rouhani. He was kept there at least from 2002 to 2007, and that he was one of the very first prisoners there. And he secured his freedom by telling an administrative review board that he was a simple shopkeeper who actually helped Americans.
Look at
that. Fucking lying piece of shit.
In the words of Maury, we have determined that was a lie.
So one thing that this is kind of fucked up for me to say, but like some part of me has my fingers crossed that it will turn out that one of the 5 leaders that we traded for Bo Bergdahl will actually turn out to be one of these next people that they apologize for.
Oh my god, yeah. Oh. Yeah, funny that would be. Or not even funny. That would be like, the real slap in the face to everybody. That would be fucking disgusting.
I don't even think those people would give a fuck, man.
Well, not like civilians. I mean, honestly, I don't think civilians really fucking care. Which is like the other. It goes back to like this being our Saigon, right? Like, look at how. I mean, we're definitely not treated the way Vietnam vets were, but a lot of people just sit there and tell us that, like what we did over there didn't matter. And like, that's fucked up.
I have never had anybody say anything negative to me. To me personally.
I've never seen someone say it to me personally either. I've seen people say it though. And I'm like...
But, like, we say it, bro. We say it. We say nothing over there.
No, what I mean is, like, like... Alright, like how I was saying, those girls, like, first day of school and shit like that. And, my friend helped build a school and all that stuff. Like, we did good things over there. It was just, our upper leadership failed us. You know what I mean? Or ended up failing, I guess you could say the Afghanis, too, because they just... fucked it all up. Like, we did good things. Individually good things. It's just, big picture, everything kind of got dicked up, and that's not really something that we ever could have changed. But, you got people who tell people to, like, get over it. But, like, how do you get over it? You sat there and, you witnessed, people going to school for their like first time ever in their fucking life, and like now that's gone, and people are just telling you to get over it. How do you get over that? You know what I mean?
I got over it because it was all a facade in the first place.
I mean, yeah.
The strategic failure didn't bother me any, except for how it directly affected us while we were down there. The only thing that really affected me was, one, the similarity to leaving Vietnam. It specifically made me miss my grandpa dearly because he was in Vietnam. And I told my grandma right after I saw the news at like 5:30 in the morning when Disclose first published it, that it made me want to share a bottle of tequila with my grandpa, tell him that I understand him, and then I cried for the next hour. Not too manly to admit that. And the other one is the interpreters we did work with that are still left behind. But like
actually,
otherwise,
not cry.
I mean, otherwise it's just a return to status quo for Afghanistan. Sucks to suck, but until they embrace a better culture, it's going to be their normal. It's going to be their normal.
Do y'all think that we, now that we're no longer at war in Iraq and Afghanistan, obviously our military-industrial complex, our bill for them is going to shrink considerably. So, do you think that's how they're planning on funding all these new infrastructure packages and all this shenanigans?
Do you think they're planning any of this?
I was going to say, I think they're just, kind of going to print the money and then figure it out later.
No, we'll figure it out a couple generations from now.
Since y'all brought up the Taliban 5 that were released in exchange for Bowie Bergdahl, I don't know if they have any specific leadership positions in the Taliban right now, but they were instrumental in the peace talks in March 2019 to end the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan.
That's so dumb.
To some extent, they are responsible for the takeover of Kabul.
They were like, not the upper. Well, no, they are actually the upper leadership. Ever since Bin Laden was killed, they were technically, the next in line, I guess you can say. So of course they were going to be involved with the peace talks.
Well,
Which, all right,
a lot of these dudes were like, these dudes weren't Al Qaeda; they were Taliban. Those are two separate organizations. Taliban was actually like the government of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, is what it was called under them, and what's called again now. Let's see, Deputy Chief of the Taliban's intelligence service, Governor of Balkan Lagman provinces, and senior Taliban military commander Mazar-e-Sharif, Chief of Staff of the Taliban Army, Interior Minister, and Taliban chief of communications. None of them were like the second in command explicitly. The closest would probably be the chief of staff of their military.
Also got, entire governors. That's pretty crazy.
But also, like,
that'd be like the equivalent of, like, I don't know, the governor of New York killing thousands of grandmas in nursing home. Oh wait,
hey, they don't fucking care about that, all right?
Well,
hey, those grandmas don't pay taxes anymore. They can go.
They only care about the women. The
ones he gropes. He don't grope old ladies. He gropes middle-aged ladies. He's got class, damn it.
He's an Italian motherfucker. God
I'm
damn
not a pervert. I'm Italian.
Fuck, I hate that guy. They should just send him to Afghanistan. Fuck it.
Dude, like, that's we turn the entire nation into Running Man.
But like when you were listing off like their positions in the Taliban, right? That goes back to like the cultural thing. Like the Taliban was more than just a terror group. It was literally like their entire government at one point in time.
Yeah, it's just like the PLO.
Which, yeah, like, it's insane to really think about, but for us that have been there and, we see the way that they were, you kind of just sit there and you're like, it makes sense.
Well, I don't necessarily, and it goes to how they are dominant, right? Because they're religious fanatics. And I have no problem with a public call to prayer, but I do think that it's definitely a flex to put that shit on a loudspeaker. All right, and to force everybody, whether they're part of your religion or not, to listen to that.
Fucking hear that shit every goddamn day. How many times a day?
5.
Yeah. God damn.
Sunrise, morning, noon, afternoon, sunset, if I remember right.
It's effective as fuck, man, and it's, I don't know, it's a weird thing that is becoming common relative. I mean, I haven't heard a call to prayer here in Oklahoma, but I'm sure you could go to some parts of like suburban areas of cities in Michigan or Minnesota, and you can hear it there, even though like all your neighbors are not Muslim. I bet you could still hear the call to prayer every fucking day.
What's her fucking name? Omar's district. She has the highest concentration of terrorists in her district. So I mean, you're obviously gonna hear that shit there. But yeah, like, it's insane. But like that comes back to the cultural differences and like the disconnect between us and them. And it's because like if you ever talk to civilians, right, about Islam or whatever, they don't understand how Islam works. Or like the people who turn around and go, Christianity is evil, and it's like, and then they'll like simp out for Islam, and you're like,
Well, that's the other thing. I think the biggest thing that those people are missing is
context. They've never experienced it.
Well, it's not even that is certainly true, but I also think that they're missing. Yeah, I can make an argument that Christianity was not a good force for a couple hundred years, like 800 years ago. All right, but I think that is a snippet of time. And by the way, during that same exact snippet of time, Islam was a fantastic science and cultural force. But that was 800 fucking years ago. It's the 21st century, and there's a group of people that are seeking to basically be like not a majority. They're seeking to be exclusively Muslim, like no dissent allowed.
It's not like them trying to be the majority. They're just trying to be it.
Well, and that's
what.
it. And you hear it all the time from ex-Muslims that are in the public space, is that Islam needs to reform. When Christianity reformed, they stopped trying to be on. It took them 100 years or so, but they stopped trying to be. Everybody must be Christian in Germany. Everybody must be Christian in France, in England.
Yeah, they stopped trying to force people to convert.
Right, and Islam has not made that. Or they had that experience for a while. When Jews, Christians, and and Muslims, mostly Jews and Muslims, but Jews, Christians, and Muslims could live peacefully side by side, and that existed for 200-300 years, and then it disappeared. And that, I think Dawson brought it up earlier. Wahhabism is the driving force, cultural force in Islam behind that exclusivity.
The Western Muslims, right, that are calling for Islam to reform. But look at how Middle Eastern Muslims react to that. They don't call they call them infidels.
Out of their country.
Yeah, they're worse than infidels, right? Because they're
apostates.
Yeah, they're what is it? They're giving out the false word of Muhammad, which is the worst, which is so much fucking worse than being an infidel, right? Because an infidel like us, right? We can be converted, quote unquote, usually through violence.
They've given it up, and that's more evil.
But the people who are preaching the word of Muhammad, that is the false word of Muhammad, is worse, far worse than not being Muslim, at least in their eyes, right? And people don't understand that here. Bro. So it's kind of like...
Is Dotson, are you killing Haji right now?
No, I'm actually not. I'm just listening.
Okay, because I see that you've loaded up into Insurgency Sandstorm, supposedly.
Yeah, I just installed it. Just installed it.
He's like, I'm going to fucking kill Haji right now. But yeah, no, it's just a huge disconnect. That's why, civilians don't really get it, which is kind of really fucking annoying.
Yeah, I mean, when the only Muslims that you and I don't know, this definitely some gray area in regards to whether or not we should talk about stuff like this, but I've got in the New Right by Michael Malice, he pulls a chart from another author I'm totally blanking on right now. And basically what it is a chart that shows when your general population is X% Muslim, what should you expect? And it's Dr. Peter Hammond from the book Slavery, Terrorism, and Islam. So my point, what I'm trying to get at is, he says the first group or whatever is less than 2% of your population is Muslim. That is an unthreatening percentage. It doesn't really matter. And out here where I'm going to college, there is an Islamic center on campus. There's roughly 500 Muslims that are here. There's 30 Jews, but whatever. There's 500 Muslims, and everybody gets along with them. They get along with everybody. Dude. After Pittsburgh, the president of the Palestinian student club came to and had Shabbat with us, and told all sorts of stories and stuff, and we got along great. And so you get these college educated people that will come out here and interact with this group of Muslims and think that is representative of Islam, when in fact it's not even kind of close, because these are these people that are here are they're loaded, dude. They got the rich parents back home. They have all the control back home. They have the Western influences back home. They are the 1% of Islam, and yet these fucking retards, they see it, they interact with this group of people and think, oh, this must be what every Muslim's like, which is a far cry from reality.
Exactly, and you try to sit there and tell them that, and they're like, "No, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about."
Yeah, they call you a bigot and racist, Islamophobe, blah blah blah.
And it's like, "Oh, you dated a Muslim? Okay, did that Muslim tell you what is that fucking rule that they have?
That they can lie to infidels?
Yeah. Yes.
Kafir.
That they can. Yeah, they can tell you about. I think it's I think it's the Mecca for a book or whatever. Whichever one comes first, they tell you that one, which is the peaceful version of Islam. But what they don't tell you is that everything that follows that, the ones that tell
it's
you
called
you can
taqiyya.
kill.
And,
The one.
Yeah, they refer to fuck that one Islamic chick that's loved on the right and always on PragerU. She talks
Ayman
about
Hirsi.
yeah, Hirsi Ali. She talks about the pre-Mecca Muhammad and the post-Mecca Muhammad. I don't know which specific parts of the Quran they would fall under, but the before seemed kind of sort of in line with the previous Abrahamic faiths, except like his own twist on it. Whereas the post Mecca Muhammad was insane with power.
Yeah. Well, even then, like it's their. I guess you could say their religious obligation to lie to non-Muslims to get them to convert. Which, if you don't know that, you don't know that, right? So, so if someone's trying to convince you that Islam isn't bad, it is their obligation to lie to you and let you know. Now, Western Muslims, like people who come here and all that stuff, like they know that, but they also don't follow the new teachings, which again falls back to them, preaching the false words of Muhammad, which makes them worse than us in every capacity. But again, right? Like people here don't know that rule exists, and yet, they sit there and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're really really peaceful people," and it's like, yeah, no, they're not. It's literally in their fucking book. It tells them that they can either tax non-Muslims more, or if you can't convert them, you can kill them, and it's okay.
Can I say, you got to do what you got to do.
Right? But yeah, like again, falls back into like the whole disconnect with everything. How the American public, just in general, is disconnected from reality. Right? Because like you see a lot of people who are shocked by these images and everything coming out of Afghanistan now. Meanwhile, every single veteran or anybody who's ever been over there is just like, this is kind of exactly how I pictured it going down. I mean, it still sucks seeing it going down, but we all knew it was going to go down that way.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious. And every time, like, I don't know, this is something I've never really interacted with the Mises folk on the topic of Islam, but I do know that like they have the jihadi mindset towards Israel, like the Mises Caucus folks. So I kind of wonder about that sometimes, like how much influence, how much are we really cherry picking from certain places to pick what our ideology is, and how far from that is principled, how unprincipled is that kind of behavior.
I mean, I guess it ultimately depends on what you define as being principled, right? Because, like, I think people who are anti-Israel aren't principled people. And I could sit there and prove it if I really wanted to, right? And am I wrong? No.
We'd all like to believe that we can prove that. Well, maybe not Dotson probably doesn't give a fuck.
Dotson's like, I want to prove the opposite.
Well, Dotson's...
Sorry, my cousin interrupted me asking me stupidly if Nicki Minaj ever took drugs.
Oh, of course not. She gives them... No, that's Cardi B. My bad. Never mind.
Cardi B puts you to sleep with drugs and then takes your money. What was the question? Where you said I would want to prove it wrong?
Well,
whether or not Israel deserves to exist.
But you have a religious argument for that more than anything else, don't you?
No, when it comes to whether a nation deserves to exist or not, like, are you talking about earns their right through conquest? If so, they've certainly earned that right. If you're talking about morally, they try to exercise influence around the world just like everyone else does. It's just they seem to be a little more successful about it because they have that cow they can perpetually milk. which is something about 6 million, 6 quadrillion merchants in wooden doors and whatnot. So if
Shouldn't
other countries had like if the Islamic world had that cow to milk,
dude, they do have
they
that
have
cow
as
to
much?
milk. It's called Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, but even then, that falls kind of sort of like that only
It's
works
called
against the
Palestine.
US.
It's called Palestine's Gaza. It's Syria, dude. They do have that cow to milk, and they're milking the fuck out of it. That's why. That's why the left is so in touch with Islam, is because Islamophobia is so bad and so prevalent, and it's everywhere. They have that cow to milk. They're milking the fuck out of that cow. Christians have that cow too, dude. The Crusades, huge
No,
embarrassment.
the Crusades is I was going to say the Crusades is the exact opposite of that cow to milk for Christianity. It's the perpetual shame of Christianity when it shouldn't be.
Right.
It should be a moment of pride. Well, some of them, not the Fourth Crusade. That one was a fucking disaster. They didn't even get to the Holy Land.
Hell yeah.
And like and there's other stories, like there's a story about a false prophet named Shabbatai Tzvi, who led like 30,000 Jews from Eastern Europe, and he was like, we're gonna go retake Israel. The time is right. This is us. And then they got to Istanbul. This was like in the 1600s, and they got to Istanbul, and they're all like, actually, we're gonna kill you, or you're going to become Muslim. And they all became Muslim. So
Is that a bigger disaster than what's his name? Fuck, give me a sec.
Are you talking about the
Bar
Dutch dude?
No, Bar Kokhba. Is that a bigger disaster than what happened after Bar Kokhba's rebellion?
Shabbatai
Roman Judea?
Tzvi is somebody that nobody you don't talk about Shabbatai Tzvi, but everybody celebrates the Bar Kokhba rebellion.
They celebrate killing a bunch of Romans, and then
they get fucking murked, dude.
They get murked, and the diaspora is forced on them.
Yeah, I don't necessarily understand it, and they also celebrate the fuck out of Masada. I don't understand that one. I don't understand why they're celebrating all these people killing themselves.
I've got a video I have to post in the chat because of this.
Oh God. So wait, what is this exactly? I don't know my Jew holidays too well.
No, none of these are holidays. these are people and places.
Okay, Bar Kokhba led. He was a self-proclaimed Messiah. He led the Jews in Judea to revolt against the Romans, killed a fuck ton of them, and Emperor Hadrian, who was already going mad over the death of his favorite Greek boy pussy, sent 12 legions and led them himself, and they slaughtered over 500,000 Jews and forced a massive diaspora, destroyed the temple, destroyed their texts, banned the practice of Judaism in the area. Like he went full blown Delenda Est in there. I posted the video that was straight taken from Dilvahadi's Roman history or the Unbiased History of Rome series. I fucking love the video because it's just fucking silly.
Imagine how pissed off that man must have been just do all that.
Hadrian, well, yeah, he was he was one of the last of the 5 great emperors of Rome. He wasn't Trajan good. Trajan made the Roman Empire the largest it ever was. Hadrian followed him, and he lost some of the gains. And he was also like blatantly bisexual, or actually homosexual. He had no real interest in women, just enough to get heirs. But he had this Greek slave. He was actually called the Greekling because he loved smashing Greek boy pussy. Loved it. His favorite thing. And the one that he absolutely loved the most died mysteriously. No one really knows why, while they were basically on vacation near a port. And he just secluded himself in his palace, depressed and enraged. And no, it wasn't the Jews who did it. No, his messengers came to him and said, "Emperor, the Jews are at it again." Jews! You need to watch the video I posted. It's good.
It's actually kind of pretty interesting because modern Jews do not acknowledge the Messiah concept about Bar Kokhba. All they talk about is basically rebellion against a domineering force, And then, by the way, once they got diasporized, like there is no more rebellion. You don't see Jews starting shit in the countries that they're living in anymore. I mean, like depends on what perspective you want to take in regards to like
starting
violent
shit,
rebellion.
but it's like bakeries and banks.
Yeah, there you go. But they're not starting violent revolts anymore. It's like that's the last one, and it's celebrated.
The only thing that rises is the bread.
But not for 2 weeks out of the year.
And those times it's less than 18 minutes or something?
Something like that. How did we get here from Afghanistan?
That's a good question. That was a nice tangent, though.
But yeah, so we all have our cow to milk, and I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the Taliban milk the fuck. I mean, I tried to. That was basically what I was trying to get across with the Taliban commander spent 8 years in Guantanamo or 5 years in Guantanamo or whatever the fuck it was. Like that's basically milking that same proverbial cow, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that for several decades.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it. I mean, look at how they treat Gaza's quote unquote president or whatever the fuck he's considered. Or who the fuck was that terrorist leader who died?
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi?
I think so, right?
The
And
ISIS
CNN
leader?
and all them didn't, like that wasn't even mentioned in like his, his post. It was like he was a scholar or whatever.
Oh, the austere scholar? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Oh,
like, no, his crowning achievement is, being a terrorist.
No, like not just being a terrorist, like the number one
the terrorist. It's like so. Yeah, I can definitely see, in the next few years, it kind of be simping out to them.
Right, and atheism has hollowed out Christianity in the West, and there is no such movement in the East. Well, I mean, atheism has also hollowed out Confucianism, but Confucianism is kind of inherently atheist. So,
Confucianism is more like a guide to social living. It's not really a religion per se.
Oh, I mean, it dictates the entire Chinese culture, and if you violate certain levels of decorum, you're basically ostracized. So that's basically got the same function.
It's same function, but I'd argue that like religion deals with things beyond just the physical. That deals with metaphysical as well. Every actual religion in the world has done that, whether it's like Shinto and spirits occupying trees and all of nature around you, or the Abrahamic faiths and the concept of an eternity in heaven, or all the pagan
in China. Taoism in China.
That would be. Give me a sec.
I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand, but I know, like, I don't know. I think what's interesting is that when we going back a little bit to like people perceive that Christianity is evil for some reason, they don't they look at something like Hitler or Stalin, and I bet you a lot of these fucking smooth brains probably think that Hitler and Stalin were fucking Christians when neither of them were in any capacity.
Oh, I literally just saw that argument. I was trying to look up while y'all were talking earlier what the death toll of Christianity was, and one guy suggested that Christianity's death toll could count to 700 million because, as an example, the Nazis killed people while claiming to be Christians. I'm like, you're really stretching what the definition of a Christian is.
And they didn't even claim to be Christians, dude. They were basically starting up they're restarting the Germanic folk religion.
Yeah, they were trying to reintroduce German paganism. They were trying to reintroduce German paganism. Like they used a lot of arcane rituals as a replacement for Christian theology.
Yeah, Hitler had a thing about like the occult, So
I've seen pictures of Nazi weddings, and they are in no way Christian. They use Germanic runes and Germanic pagan symbology throughout all of it. There's no mention of a 3-person covenant between a man, a woman, and God.
And then Stalin or whatever communist dictator you want to pick, for them, God is the state. So none of these insane people are Christians. I mean, and I don't know.
That would be an interesting thing to ask somebody who thinks I'm gonna do that at work. I'm gonna fucking ask them if they think Hitler was a Christian.
I did this research.
I'll do the research.
A comment I left on someone's Facebook like 5 years ago. I cannot find the original source, not anytime soon, but they were arguing that Christianity was one of the most violent religions in history because something crusades. And I shared all the sources at the time, but it showed that at most Christianity could maybe lay claim to 100 million deaths. That's like really pushing the meaning of what a Christian caused death is. The two most violent ideologies in the world are Islam for total death toll, that they're responsible for over 250 million dead directly, and communism, which is closer to 150 to 200 million, but did so within a century versus Islam taking what 1400 years to do. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
give or take.
It's crazy how efficient the state can be when it really puts its mind to something, huh?
man, we can't officially protect your right to keep and bear arms, but we could totally efficiently herd you into cattle cars and slaughter you in mass.
Right? You know that fucking, that little plastic piece on your AR because you want to have something shorter than 16 inches? You can't have that. No siree. But the Taliban, they can have them fucking MRAPs. Alright, guys.
Well, see,
Thanks.
that's because the Taliban spent 20 years shooting at the American government. We own machine guns, and they burn us, our women, and children to death, and then claim we were pedophiles.
Oh my god. Well, like, isn't that funny, though, too, right? Our government has the audacity to sit there and tell us what we can and can't own. Meanwhile, we just gave the Taliban all that shit.
Well, we
I can't even
air quotes
fucking own that
gave
shit.
it to the
So,
Afghani government. We left it for the Afghani military,
But like
forgetting that 80% of the Afghani military are actually Taliban insurgents
yeah,
wearing the
so
wrong
And-
uniform.
we gave it to them. That's just what that is.
okay, so if let's play a hypothetical, and then we should probably wrap it up. It's been almost 2 hours already. But if Trump had been reelected, what would have been different about this pullout?
I think it actually would have been sloppier in some ways.
Yeah,
We would
because they
have
had less time to do it, right?
we would have more thoroughly announced it to our allies. And the question at that point is, would the Taliban finally have learned that shooting at us as we leave is the best way to keep us there, and so let us leave? Ultimately, the bureaucracies that Biden has now were the same bureaucracies Trump had then. So the interpreter visa aspect would have still been a shit show. Like, they still wouldn't have approved any of the visas that they didn't approve this time. All that really would have happened is this shit show would have happened at the end of the month. That's really it.
I thought that Trump's plan was May 1st.
That was the
Trump
original
was-
plan, and it required the Taliban to be peaceful, and I guess the Taliban decided to be a little
Trump-
dumb.
All right, so this was like my big, not issue, I guess. Well, no, it was an issue. Trump was planning on signing a peace treaty with the Taliban, which I think was fucking retarded. However, would that have maybe worked? Maybe, but I also think that still falls into like the same issue we see now, where it like legitimately. Oh my god! It makes the fucking
Legitimize.
yeah. There we go. God damn! It makes the Taliban like an actual thing instead of what they should just be considered a terrorist. That's just it. So
Well-
it's kind of like the same situation we're in now, except at least in that situation, it would have been like a peace treaty, and we might have been able to get, our interpreters out who are still there. We probably would have had a little more time to do something, but it's still the same thing.
I think that at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, the only people responsible for your freedom is yourself. And so therefore, I don't
yeah.
feel bad at all in the way that this has ended up, because the people there that want freedom should fight for freedom. And their failure to do so just says they don't want freedom. And if they don't want freedom, that's fine. Let them have no freedom.
Did you happen to see what a majority of the people, the vast majority of people who were rushing for the planes at Kabul looked like, by the way?
No.
They were military-age males.
Yep.
Yeah.
They have no will to fight, either because they want the Taliban there,
Or
or
they're embedded agents.
No, dude, they're uniformed. They're the people that are gonna be shot first.
Well, no, we saw that in with the Syrian refugees too, right? They were all military-aged men,
No,
mostly.
they were all probably gonna be drafted, and that's why they're running. Drafted by either side, forced to
Well,
pick.
I mean, maybe, but then look at the spike in Islamic terrorist attacks in England, France, all of them that took in Syrian refugees.
And man, getting shot at is way scarier than throwing acid on a young lady.
Right?
It really is. And it's way scarier than knifing people in a bar and then getting attacked with a
Right?
narwhal.
Or fucking gang raping a girl in Germany. You know, there's a lot easier ways to
On
go about
Christmas.
your business.
Right.
It's a lot easier to drive a box truck into a crowd of people in a crowded Christmas market in Germany where no one has a gun than
Right?
the middle of a market in Afghanistan where every Haji and his uncle has an AK.
Right? It's really easy to goddamn
You
shoot
know,
up Paris when no one is armed.
The box truck that actually probably would have killed me that year at the Christmas market in Berlin if I hadn't listened to my wife that day. Did y'all know that story?
No.
So
Nope.
the 2016 Christmas market attack in Germany happened at the Berlin Christmas market. That morning, my wife and I and our 1-year-old son were going to go to a Christmas market for the first time. I wanted to go to the Berlin one because I've been to the Nuremberg, Regensburg, and Munich ones. They're all fairly big, fairly nice. But I'm like, I want to see the really big one in Berlin. Let's go.
I want to
She's
go to
like,
the real one.
yeah. No, they're all good. It's just she's like, I want to go see the big one in Berlin. And she was like, I'm tired and it's been a long day and I want to do this with you, but let's just go to the Nuremberg one. It's the closest one. So hop on the train, we go to Nuremberg. The whole time I get this old niggling feeling in the back of my head, like, man, something ain't right today. And I get back home, hop back on my Facebook, and my phone's just exploding, and my Facebook's exploding with people just going, "Oh my God, are you okay? What happened? We heard you were at the Christmas market." And I was like,
Bro,
"What?"
not that many people care about you.
My
don't
parents, my mom, my grandma, my aunts, my sister, my wife's friends, my wife's family.
People.
All
Okay.
right, biggest. We get it. Go on.
It's what happens when you get married and have kids. People suddenly care, at the very least, for the safety of your child.
So they
Yeah.
care about the kid, not you. Okay, anyway, continue.
But they have to care about me by extension because I am dad, and without dad, this child ain't nothing. Anyway,
Fair
yeah,
enough.
if I hadn't listened to my wife, which, to be fair, will be the only time I ever make that mistake in my life, I would probably be dead.
Well, without the Holocaust, I wouldn't be alive.
Yeah, but you being alive requires the death of 12 million people. Me being alive requires listening to a sleepy lady with graying hair.
Am I worth it? Time will tell.
Did you twerk it? Put my thing down, flip it in reverse, and now we're demonetized.
Well, copy strike, actually. Yeah.
That's
So-
same diff.
So, any other final thoughts? Closing statements.
If the Taliban goes back to treating Bachi the way they allegedly did when they first took power, I could support their so-called legitimate government. Killing pedophiles, always agree with it.
That's fair. But do you think they would go back to that? Probably not.
They might. They're too busy trying to make money off heroin to try and make money off the child sex trade.
Heroin does kind of knock you out for a little while.
Kind of hard to get your dick up when you're knocked out from an opium overdose. I live in central Indiana. I know.
Hey man, so many of my sister's friends have died from heroin. Dumbasses.
Actually, what's funny is I
In
know
the
a lot
words
of people.
of Jocko Willink. Good.
Yes. All right, so we will try again next week. Maybe we'll get some actual reviews one of these days. We'll have to figure out what the fuck we're actually talking about. I'm gonna hit the stop button right about now.